Hi, and welcome to AAGT Informs Episode 13. I'm very happy to introduce our speaker, Ms. Nadia Westen, the District Gifted Teacher at the Fort Huachuca Accommodation Schools in Southern Arizona. Ms. Westen was also the recipient of the 2021 AAGT Gifted Teacher of the Year for all the work she has done for her gifted students in her district. Yay!
Yay!
She's here today to share the program she implemented and the steps it took them to life. And she's also going to discuss growth mindset and the power of productive failure. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. I'm excited to
Welcome.
be here.
All right, I'll let you take the stage.
All right, let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. And okay. So what I'm going to be speaking to you about today is growth mindset and the power of productive failure. And let's see. So I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about myself. I am a gifted teacher. I've been teaching gifted since 2013. And all of these certifications are actually on here because a lot of people are like, how did you become a gifted teacher? And honestly, I was in the military and I was getting out of the military and I wanted to go back into teaching. And it all happened by accident. I actually applied to be a school aide and they said, I'm sorry, we don't want you to be a school aide. And I kind of had, the, oh my gosh, I failed. What do I do now? And then it was followed up with the, we want you to be our gifted teacher instead. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So I had a lot of learning to do right away. And throughout the years, I have learned so much from some wonderful resources because there's so many. And I found that we learn best from other teachers and from our students as well. Right now, I work at the Fort Huachuca Accommodation School District. I have been here, this is actually my 4th year here, and I run the K-8 pull-out program. But of course, as many of you know, with COVID, things have kind of just been turned upside down. So our pull-out program has actually become a fully online gifted module, and I will show you guys in a little bit, bear with me, of how we did that. We turned our gifted program to an online database, and the students have actually surpassed all expectations of participation. So it has turned out amazing. So I'm going to start with addressing the problem. As presenting the problem first helps provide purpose, it ignites your previous knowledge, and it gives you some knowledge into the big idea. So in my experience as a gifted teacher, I've built 2 programs from the ground up. I do all the testing, gifted academic plans, which are similar to IEPs. I write the lessons, and I have about 50 students each year. And what I have found every single year, it does not fail, whether it's in the core classroom or I bring it up in the gifted classroom. I say, okay, guys, let's talk about growth mindset. And right away, I have a whole bunch of students that say, oh, I've always been mislabeled. And I'm like, what do you mean you've been mislabeled? And they're like, oh, someone told me I have a fixed mindset. And I'm like, well, why? And the students are very quick, as I'm sure many of you know, with many gifted students, they're quick to tell me that, oh, because I'm good at this or I'm good at that, they said my mindset is fixed. And what this does is our gifted students who are perfectionists, or even our students in the core classroom that are perfectionists, they automatically think they did something wrong because they apparently, according to someone else, don't have that growth mindset. And on the opposite end, with our underachieving gifted students, they figure it doesn't matter anyways, I've already been labeled, so why try? Gifted students often get overlooked in the core classroom because people assume they've already got it, so why put extra time into it? Well, this isn't exactly fair, and it doesn't go to our whole equity because they don't have the same opportunities to practice failure. So with this, I jump to our possible solutions. It's complicated. I get it. Problems generally are complicated. That's how they become problems. But why do gifted classrooms matter? Why do we need actual funding? Well, a big reason for this, I'm going to tell you, and it's really simple. It sounds really simple to some, but it is to make sure growth mindsets and the power of productive failure actually occurs. Growth mindsets actually matter. They do. And how do we reach gifted students? I'm here to share some ideas and some things that have worked for me for reaching gifted students and growing growth mindset. And what I found is gifted programs, whether they're a pull-out, a push-in, or a combination, gifted programs are key for productive failure. Here we go. So what I'm going to cover in this presentation is what growth mindset is in the power of productive failure. Why does growth mindset in the power of productive failure matter? How do you teach growth mindset in the power of productive failure? How do I teach it? And what you should really remember. And why I say what you should really remember is because many of you know that immediately after the presentation, an audience remembers about 50% of what has been said. There's been tons of studies on this, and it's only 50% immediately after a presentation. But by the next day, it's only 25%. So I'm hoping if I remind you at the end what you should really remember, and I give you tons of ideas and some tricks that you can use in your own classroom, hopefully growth mindset and the power of productive failure will become normalized. Okay, so what is growth mindset? Brains and talent are just the starting point. Most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This part of the definition is key for gifted students, especially underachieving gifted students who may be relying on just talent. It is important to remind students that practice makes progress. And I repeat, practice makes progress. This is like one of our mantras in my gifted pullout program is the kids know that I need them to practice. Practice makes progress no matter what your starting point is. Okay, so growth mindset. This is very, very important because some people think that growth mindset is a character trait, and growth mindset can resemble a character trait. It can even very become parallel to a character trait, but growth mindset is situation specific and it can be taught. It's essential for perfectionists to recognize and learn. Many gifted students are perfectionists, so they claim they understand growth mindset, but then when they fail, they may not know how to productively fail. That one little word, productive, in front of failure changes everything. They see themselves as failures if they don't know about productive failure. This needs to change. I'm sure all teachers, educators, parents, you'll agree with me that it needs to change. The kids cannot see themselves as failure because of one mistake or one fail. They need to learn to productively fail. It can only change with practice. Again, I'm going to say it throughout. Practice is progress, and gifted students need an area to practice if we want to see them progress from where they're at and continue to grow. So what is productive failure? There are a whole bunch of definitions out there. I'm sure you can find some. Kapur and Belinsky are from 2011. They got together and they researched with the National Institute of Education, and they came up with this really great definition that says that productive failure is a learning design that entails the designs of conditions for learners to persist in generating and exploring representations and solution methods for solving complex, novel problems. So all of that in my mindset, I have to word it so all of my students understand it because I teach K through 8. So in terms that I can understand, in terms that my students can understand, what we get down to is that productive failure doesn't mean that it's going to help them in the short term, but it maximizes their learning in the long term. So here's an example. A great comparison is a baby. We expect them to get things wrong. They fail. They try to, we encourage babies to keep at it. Walking, for example, my 5-year-old, he thinks it's hilarious and ridiculous when we start talking about when he found walking to be a struggle. And it wasn't an over-the-top struggle for him. He was a normal baby and, he fell every now and then, and we cheered him on and picked him right back up and got him walking again. But the comparison is something that he can relate to when he makes mistakes now. We bring up how he had to keep practicing in order to progress, in order to learn how to walk, to run. When he's struggling with bike riding right now, or with his homework, because yes, I have him start learning, sight words right now. We bring up walking, so he starts laughing. He makes those previous learning connections and he realizes that it's okay to fail. I do this to my students too. Since I have them from kinder to 8th grade, even though I am in a military base, our population is often moving, which is even more important for growth mindset because they need that resilience going from one school to another. But many of them are with me for more than 1 year. So I remember the times that they failed and that they productively failed. They kept with what they were working on. And I bring up those examples, even though it's a whole year later. And they're like, Miss Weston, why are you talking about this? And I'm like, well, remember how you started to get upset, but you kept at it. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then they start to laugh or smile. And they're like, okay, I got this. And it's that internal speech that we want to get to where they're telling themselves, I can do this. I productively failed, which means I learned from my mistake. I can pick myself up and I can figure out how to succeed. So, why growth mindset in the power of productive failure? There are a lot of reasons. It includes the idea that intelligence is learned. It helps them, especially gifted students, again, it helps with that self-directed research because they love to figure out things and explore their own interests. It gives them self-learning autonomy. It builds their self-confidence and gives them the power to be in charge of their education. It teaches students to deal with the inevitable. Let's face it, we've all failed at something, but it's a matter of, can we learn from that failure? Can we make it productive and keep going? It helps deter the drive for perfection because remember, perfection is stagnation. We don't want them to just be okay with, oh, I'm talented, but I'm just going to stay here. Michael Jordan, great athletes, they push themselves, they continue to grow from that talent. And that's what we need to teach our students. We also need to be aware of the drive for perfection. It is detrimental. You have some students that do not want to fail and they do not know how to fail. You have some students that believe they were going to fail anyways. So they simply give up or they don't try. In their heads, though, they did not fail because they didn't try. So they kept their perfect record for success in things they tried, which is a little bit confusing because for some of my underachievers, I have core teachers that are like, well, they didn't try, so they failed. But in that gifted student's mind, they didn't fail because they never even tried at it. They have their perfect record for things they tried in still. And the fear of failure, unfortunately, it starts early in life and it's common among high achievers and gifted students and middle schoolers. It is extremely common. So we need to teach our gifted students, our core students, the growth mindset and the power of productive failure. Okay, so gifted students generally know they're different. Ask them. If you provide a clear, age-appropriate explanation with growth mindset and the power of productive failure, it helps them to understand their giftedness. They realize, okay, yeah, I'm good at this, but I can continue to grow. There is always, always something else to learn. That's what I tell my students. There is no such thing as perfection. There is always more to learn, somewhere else to grow and go. For true growth mindset for gifted students, we must incorporate both differences in ability and growth through effort. This flexible growth mindset in the power of productive failure recognizes that students should know what their gifts and disabilities are. This means they need to know what areas they're achieving in and what areas they still need a little extra help and some more practice. They learn skills to expand their intellectual capabilities. We help gifted students embrace who they are and grow with the power of productive failure. So, in order to grow beyond their talent, this requires emotional discipline. And let's face it, emotional discipline is a very, very difficult thing at times. It's a skill that must be trained and developed with the use of growth mindset in the power of productive failure. People quit or never even try, many times because of self-doubt and fear, generally not because of intelligent calculation. With gifted students, it's essential that they have the resources and time. Hint, hint, a gifted program to practice and grow beyond their talents. We want them to continue to progress like everyone else. So if the core classroom is limiting their practice of productive failure, we need to change that. Gifted programs can help do that. pull-out programs, push-in programs. There are various forms, but they're all there to help support gifted children who are often overlooked or pushed to the side because of the stereotype of, oh, they're gifted, they've got it. We have to change this. Gifted should not mean more work, but it should mean more challenge. Gifted programs that challenge students with the growth mindset and the power of productive failure. It is a must. I cannot stress this enough. We need to continue to help our gifted students grow beyond their talent. So, growth mindset, it has so many pluses to teaching it, especially in the power of productive failure. We all face trauma, adversity, and other stresses. Why not teach students the skills they'll need later in life? They will learn all 6 skills of resilience with the growth mindset and the power of productive failure. They will also learn how to build grit. None of us achieve 100% at everything all the time. Let's teach our students the skills they need later in life to cherish their accomplishments. In psychology, grit is a positive non-cognitive trait based on an individual's perseverance of effort, combined with the passion for a particular long-term goal or end state. And this is from Wikipedia, but you can find your own definition for grit. I have the students come up with their own definition, and it always encompasses all of these skills. And the growth mindset and the power of productive failure teaches these skills of grit. So, why does it matter? Dweck writes, in the fixed mindset, everything is about the outcome. If you fail or if you're not the best, it's all been wasted. The growth mindset allows people to value what they're doing regardless of the outcome. They're tackling problems, charting new courses, working on important issues. Maybe they haven't found the cure for cancer, but the search was deeply meaningful. And Dweck, this was from her 2015. You can watch her TED Talk. Her growth mindset is amazing, but it's only the start. We need to include that productive failure. It supports self-determination theory as well with growth mindset. You're nurturing autonomy, competence, relatedness, and connection. All things for those of you that are familiar with gifted students. We need them to feel connected to the world, to their peers that they often have some social issues with. And you know what? Growth mindset and the power of productive failure, it teaches them those social emotional connections, of those academic autonomy, the power to take charge of their learning. And I'm going to go into it again. Why does it really matter? I keep stressing that growth mindset matters. Well, if you want a classroom that promotes social, emotional, academic learning, it builds the grit, it builds resilience, and it allows people to value what they're doing regardless of the outcome, then power of productive failure is the way to go. It will help students see failure and setbacks as an indication that they should continue developing their skills, rather than a signal that indicates this is something I'm not good at, I need to give up. Talk to your students, listen to your students, to your children. How many times, at least once, I guarantee it, have you heard, I'm not really good at that? And then they get excited on another subject because they're like, oh, well, I'm really good at that. That needs to stop. They're not good at it yet. They need to realize that power of productive failure to continue to progress and become great at so many different things, and then realize that, okay, I can still practice because practice makes progress. So how do I teach it? I teach growth mindset with a combination of all of these bullet points that you can see right here. I follow John Jay, who was an English poet and dramatist. He said, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. It's great that I've told you what the problem is, what possible solutions of assuring gifted programs are around with funding in order to teach growth mindset and the power of productive failure. But I need to remember to show you how to use it. So hopefully I can teach you some of the tricks and I can show you some of the examples that I've used in my own classroom so you can please take them. As teachers, one of the best things we do is borrow from each other, learn from each other, and grow your program as well. Remember, 21st century 4Cs are perfect for practicing productive failure and developing growth mindset because they incorporate the critical thinking, the creativity, collaboration, and communication. And sometimes they do it all at once. So growth mindset and the power of productive failure. This right here is a slide that is mainly for my admin and some teachers that need to have the research in order to believe what someone is saying. So here's some of the research. I've modified the data a little bit. It's from Kapur and Belinsky, who studied with a focus purely on math. But what do you know? It doesn't just apply to math. If we explore representations and solutions and we give them choice boards to do this, then we can help them in core subject resources and we can help them grow beyond. Rubrics and classrooms, agreed criteria help so much in the organization and knowledge assembly. So again, here's some of the data that helps support that growth mindset and the power of productive failure actually is successful. Okay, you can find tons of data out there. I use this one because it kind of breaks it down for a visual, so my visual learners and my verbal learners understand it and can explain it. And the students, when I start talking about the choice boards and them taking charge of their learning, they understand it as well. Because yes, I do explain the why. Why is growth mindset? Why am I teaching you about productive failure? The students need to know why it's important in order to internalize it and make that lesson important to themselves as well. So how do I teach it? If you're the type of educator that needs an in-depth class to fit your learning style or detailed lessons, here are some of the resources that I have personally used. So Learner's Edge has a great class on Mindsets Matter. You get this cool little book with it. And yes, you have to do homework because it is a class. They give you, I believe it's 3 graduate courses. So it's great for, horizontal movement as well if your school district does that. And in the process, you learn so much about mindsets in the classroom and growth mindset. Also, there are some free reward tags for growth mindset because even though we want to internalize that success, sometimes a physical reward, it goes a long way. Let's admit it. Who doesn't like getting a, hey, good job, here's a cupcake? I know I do. I have a sweet tooth. If you need some specific lessons, please check out Teachers Pay Teacher. There are tons of free growth mindsets. I'm on Teachers Pay Teachers as well. And honestly, I started my Teachers Pay Teachers because I was making so many things in my classroom for my students that I was just like, you know what? I'm sure somebody else could use this. Let me save them some of the work. So mine isn't really much for business, but there are tons of free resources because I went with the goal of I just wanted to help another gifted teacher have a resource that they may need. So please check it out. Also, let's get into the language. Before we get into the specific examples and resources on how I teach growth mindset and the power of productive failure, here is a serious reminder. We as educators have to change to solution-focused language if we want our students to do so. And these are just 2 examples from Teachers Pay Teachers, bringing that up again. Wholehearted School Counseling has a free poster. That's that first one on the left, the problem-focused, turning it into solution-focused language. Post the poster up in your classroom. Refer back to it. When you hear those problem-focused words, it is okay to say, hey guys, instead of this, why not try, and replace it with the solution-focused language. Same thing with WordPress.com. This was another free resource that I have up in my classroom, and it discusses about problem talk when they're in the groups, talking and collaborating and getting ready to communicate their ideas to the whole class. I want to make sure they're using solution-focused talk in order to practice that growth mindset and the power of productive failure. So if it starts out with the problem of, oh my gosh, this isn't working, there's so many problems and we don't get it, then break it down. Ask them, what is it that what you're curious about? What can I extend some information or lend you some information on? And I always say lend you some information because then my students run with it. They end up saying, hey, Miss Westen, you told me about ABC. Well, here's DEF all the way to Z, because they've gone and they've researched on their own and they've added to the knowledge I've given them. Okay. So this is how I start. There's serious power in inputting this 3-little word, the word yet. It's one of the first steps to teaching growth mindset and productive power. I teach the power of yet. It acts as a reminder and it triggers students to keep going. These are some of my favorite resources for in-person or virtual learning. I know some of us are still virtual, and honestly, when we go back to in-person next year, I will probably still incorporate some of this virtual things that we've done this year, just because it's kind of added to my toolbox of tricks and how to get the students engaged. So here's some, all of these are free with the exception of the first one. It is a video from Flocabulary, which I love Flocabulary. Flocabulary is amazing. And no, they're not paying me to say this. I just really like Flocabulary because they have the vocabulary that goes into all of their videos. They have for growth mindset, we do the quiz afterwards, and we always do it as a class quiz. So this way it becomes more of a discussion as well. And I get to learn more about my students. The other resources on there, you can find them on YouTube actually, or you can download them, or you can order the books if you want. My younger students love the music, and some of my older students actually love the music ones as well. And they get up and start dancing. And you know what? I let them. We have an area in the class that they can move around, they can dance. I have one student who does every single vocabulary video that we play. He's dancing in the background, and he's a middle schooler. And you know what? He can repeat the main points. He can extend the main points with his own idea. So I know he's paying attention. He just needs some movement. So growth mindset and the power of productive failure. Here is all your implementation. These are just some examples of things that I do in my classroom, and that I hope that if you're not doing them, you take some ideas, take what works for you, please. And if you need more ideas, they are out there, and ask a fellow teacher, because again, we learn from borrowing each other's ideas and extending them. So take these ideas, make them better. And if you make them better, please send me an email so I can then make them better as well. So the concept of bucket filling, it's been around since the 1960s, but it's so important to growth mindset, especially in the power of productive failure. Bucket filling uses actions and words to make someone feel good about themselves, to enhance resilience and inspire them to achieve, not determined by the success or failure of the moment. Fill My Bucket lessons, they're available on TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers, for free. And if you want to do a hand project, the dollar store is a great resource for buying little buckets. My son's school, he's in preschool right now. They do this at the preschool level, and they did it for a week, but now it turned into an everyday exercise I do with my son. At the end of the day, I ask him to put one thing in his own bucket to build his confidence and his communication skills. Tell me, what is one thing you liked about yourself today? Or what is one thing you felt went well for you today? I, of course, add verbally to his bucket too and compliment him. And the cool part about it is at 5 years old, he's already turning it around, complimenting me, but not just with a, oh, well, you're pretty, mom, or hey, mom, you did a good job today. He's giving me specifics. He's communicating. He's building that vocabulary. And you know what? I do this with my son, but I do it with my students as well. And it's amazing how it helps our classroom grow as a family. They support one another because they feel each other's bucket, and they verbally compliment her when they're sitting there with, they can't have that, a student, they're stuck and they're just like, I'm not good at this. If they say it out loud before I can even reassure them, their classmates are like, what are you talking about? You don't get it yet. Where are you stuck? Show me, I'll help you. And remember the time you did this, you were amazing on this project when I was the one stuck. They're filling each other's buckets. Another thing I do in my class, and I do this even with a virtual program right now, is we have digital notebooks, and they can take many forms. The two main forms that they take are learning or showcase. In my classroom, we use our digital notebooks as learning portfolios, which you can see the student's journey through a project, and their portfolio often includes several iterations of the same project. So this way they can see that practice makes progress. They can also use these as showcase portfolios, excuse me. Got a little tongue twisted there, but they can use their digital journals as showcase portfolios because they can show their parents. They're like, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, check this out. And how cool is it that parents are like, wow, you did this at the beginning of the year, and they can just keep scrolling through their digital journals. They also use them as a way to communicate with me and stay in touch because I can digitally just leave a little comment. And we use Google Classroom, so it's on their Google Drive. They go in there, I leave a comment, they write back to me, and it just keeps the conversation going, and I can keep learning from my students, and they don't have to share their journal entries with anyone if they don't want to. So this also allows them to do a lot of self-reflection. Another thing I do is we read, we watch, we learn about failures from the famous and successful, and we discuss perseverance. This is so important because honestly, there a lot of my students will be like, well, so and so, and they bring up, a person that's famous at the time, and this will probably change throughout the weeks, right? So whoever's in the news or whoever they watched on TV that like is so famous and successful, and they're like, oh, they have it so easy. Well, we start looking into about all the failures. They realize, wow, they're just a person like I am. It takes history and it gives us the human side of history. And that's what this book right here does. It's called How They Choked. It's great for the middle school level. And I just read a couple of pages every class or so, because even at the middle school level, students love to be read to. And then a lot of times, again, they take that information, and by the next class, even if we're on the same person, they've already researched and are able to tell me 10 different things of how that person failed and how they succeeded. So those are just a couple of the resources that we do throughout the year. Right here, this is my digital notebooks. I already told you a little bit about them, how I use them to communicate. You can see on the right, one of the comments that I left a student there. But my digital notebooks start with a self-esteem journal. And the self-esteem journal, I created it for my students so this way they could understand how to love themselves and realize that I love them and they need to love themselves as well because they're amazing and they're great human beings. And it's so wonderful that I have the opportunity to see them grow. It builds their growth mindsets, and they can make their own as well. I started off like I had this simple flower one where a student wrote like, oh, I like my typing speed. And then he realized, Miss Weston, I don't really like your flowers though. So I'm going to go ahead and make my own template, and I'm going to continue to create my journal though. And he does this. He's actually a middle schooler, and he does this about once a week. He goes in there and he adds things about what he likes about himself. And the great thing about this student is he is not one of my students that is overly confident or that he likes to be in the limelight. In fact, he's like, please, please don't pay attention. Don't call on me. Yes, I know the answer, but don't point out to everyone else that I know it. So this is one of the ways that he has found that he can show that he is building his self-esteem and his confidence, and he can share that with me and sometimes share it with his classmates, but he can do it in where he feels comfortable. Okay. I also am a very, very big supporter of teaching with games. I have my students reflect after every game we play. And it doesn't take too long. It can take up to 5-10 minutes. You can fit it in really quick as students are even going out the door. I ask them, what did you learn about this game? What went well? And what could you improve on? Those 3 simple questions, they're a game changer. And those digital notebooks that we're using this year, this is one of the pages from an elementary student, actually. They got on to civics.com and played Winning the White House. And then they wrote me just a couple of sentences or 2 of how the game went, what they liked about it, what went well, and what they needed to improve on. And I always try to write them back and let them know, add to their conversation, or let them know in this case that even though they lost, what mattered was they tried and they learned something from it. And just FYI, this student did go back and he tried winning the White House like 5 more times until he was like, Miss Weston, I think I figured out all the tricks in this game. So it wasn't even, this game was easy. It was, there are tricks and strategies to this game, and I've understood them now. And then from there, of course, he wanted a different challenge. So we have to keep building on challenges, which is kind of fun for me too, because I learned so much from my students. Okay. This is another game from another student. I believe this one is at the K2 level. And she said, I didn't do very well on my first try. I kind of messed up, but I did have fun. And you know what? That's the important part. I'm trying so hard to teach them that it is okay to have failure as long as it is productive and they're learning and they're having fun. And another thing that I advise for digital notebooks is get yourself a bunch of digital stickers as well. There are tons online for free, and just keep your own little database, and it allows kids to, use them as they want. And it also gives them that reminder of, hey, keep it up. Here's a little donut that's saying you're doing an amazing job. And they love them, all ages, my middle schoolers too. In fact, my middle schoolers keep track as to what stickers I've already given them. And I've gotten a message or two of, hey, Miss Weston, I got this sticker already. Do you have anything else? And as I'm building my own stickers too, I'm trying to make the stickers based off of the students' interest. So I have a whole bunch of Star Wars ones. Baby Yoda, really big right now. And just for purposes as well. No, I'm not selling my stickers or anything. So they are just for my students' classroom use. So I don't want to get into any trouble for that either. But yes, my students love the digital stickers. When we were in person, we did a lot of hands-on project-based learning. And I plan to continue with this when we go back in person next year. We do hands-on learning this year as well, but I'm not there in the classroom with the students. And I know those of you teaching virtually, you can agree that no matter how much hands-on learning you're doing or how great virtual learning is, you may miss, like I do, the actual in-person interaction, seeing the students actually build and see their little fine motor skills and problem solve as they're building. And that's what we do. We do a lot of engineering projects, a lot of STEAM projects. This is one of the examples. We did a smart house with Makey, and this had writing, history. It had lots of math. It has all of the subjects in it because we examine real world problems. The main question was, which was better, a tiny home or a regular sized home? And from there, students actually had Socratic debates. They set their own criteria. They started building with different materials. Here you can see some of the Lego houses that they started building. And these Lego houses were amazing. If you touched a doorbell, you would hear a song. If you hit a little mat or one of the little animals they build, you would actually hear a story as well. So it's teaching those technology skills also. A lot of the projects include reading about different style houses. We created flip grids explaining smart houses and giving them they had to try to sell their home. So it was teaching them kind of those argumentative of why my house should sell for this much instead of this. They wrote their real estate listings, created homes, and we offered tons of choices because, again, students feel it's necessary that they feel in charge of their learning. So I offered them choices on whether they were going to create a poster, a video, or a song. They created those real life connections by actually researching market prices and being very shocked by current market prices and figuring out where their house would be located and how much it would cost. This was another way that I teach productive failure with growth mindset is that student choice. I just mentioned it a little while ago on how student choice is important. This is another way that I've done student choice. I found that students, especially gifted students, do so much better when they feel like they're in charge of their learning and they have an input in their learning process. It makes sense since how many adults don't like when they're just told they have to do something. We like having choice as well. So do our students. To accomplish the goal of listening to my students, I use tons of interest surveys throughout the years. Google Form makes it so much easier to actually do these interest surveys and see the results quickly. So I recommend Google Forms, guys, because it will make your life so much easier to see results. I also use choice boards in some of our projects and during breaks to encourage learning when we're not in school. And during breaks, I try to make the choices, fun as well, something that will get them moving. So you can look on here and see some of the options that my students had. And this was for a K through 5 option level. And it allowed them to have that opportunity to look forward to coming back to class and actually sharing with me as well some of the things they did. And since we were online this year, I could look at their digital notebook and see all the pictures they were taking along the way also. So how I share process, not just product, is what matters, and I provide them audience is I ask this. It is key. I ask them with everything they do, is this your best work for today? What can you learn to make it better? So even if the product is super amazing, which I mean, many times the products are just so incredible that I'm like, oh my gosh, my students did this. If I tried that, I could not do that. I'm just amazed by their ability levels, but I still always ask them, is this your best work for today? What can you do to make it better? And then I let them know, at the same time, this is incredible though, this is amazing. But remember, practice makes progress. I use a digital website that I'll show you guys in a little bit to share their work and their products throughout our K-8 district. And the students, whether they're gifted or not, have gotten on that website. And when they work really hard at something, they email me and they say, Miss Westen, I did this, this, and this. And a lot of times they show me their progress along the way, and I'll put it on there. So this way the whole district can see it as well, and they can be proud of themselves, and others can take a share in that pride. If I notice hard work or innovative work, I ask to post it on our website also. If a student's very shy and doesn't want to approach me, I'll approach them, and I'll approach different core teachers as well. The core teachers have learned that I'll poke my head in their classroom and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Please share a video because I have to share it with everyone. You're doing awesome. And in doing that, it helps our teachers, our core teachers, whether they're in charge of gifted students or not, take part and take ownership in all of our students' learning. Okay. One of the biggest things in order to make sure that growth mindset and the power of productive failure is actually a success is you need to make sure your environment is actually safe for productive failure. Make it part of your decor. Prioritize student-driven classrooms. Use those student surveys, those interest surveys. Let the students know you want to hear from them. Build in lots of reflection time. Have class discussions, personal journal responses. Always ask, is it your best work for today? What can you learn and make it better? Filling productively together it makes the classroom turn into a community, to a family. Team building exercises are great for this. Make a point to discuss your own mistakes, keep it school related and appropriate. That's what I always tell my students as well. But share some of your mistakes too. Make yourself more human to the students and share how you've learned from them. And of course, these are some resources that you guys can use. Save Fred or Saving Sam. They have two different names online, but they're both free. It's a very quick K-5. Even some of my middle schoolers that have done it still say, hey, can we do Saving Fred this year or Saving Sam? But I get most of the materials from the dollar store. It's a really quick lesson where they just are presented with the materials and then said, okay, put the worm on top of the cup without touching it. And that's the only instructions I give them at first in order to let them problem solve and communicate. And then as time goes on, they share hints and tips with each other. And you'd be surprised at how many ways students can come up with Saving Fred or Saving Sam. It's amazing. It's just mind blowing. My students are always surprising me, and I'm always growing and continue to, practice and progress with them. Another game that we play, because again, I'm a huge fan of games in the classroom when they're time and actually based on what we're doing. We play sequence because it teaches strategy and it teaches those communication skills. And what do you know? They're not allowed to verbally communicate with their teammates, but they start learning nonverbal cues as well. Another thing with decor, this is one of the things that I made for my classroom. Like I said, Star Wars is pretty big for a lot of my students right now, and I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan. So I made this poster so this way they remember the power of the growth mindset. And I always tell them, use the force, and we have this blown up in our classroom for them to look at. And also it's in their digital notebooks because again, we're online this year. So I make sure they have that reminder every time they open their digital notebook. Okay. And this is our digital makerspace. I'm going to go ahead and take you guys here so you can see what it is that I did this year for our students. This helps with growth mindset. It lets them know that I'm still there for them, and it gives them challenges. So what it is it is a website I created using Google Sites. And honestly, if you're sitting there telling yourself, well, I have no idea how to do that, I had absolutely no idea either. Practice not being afraid of that failure, productive failure. Uh, it was a learning experience. I just sat down one night and was like, I need to figure something out because my students need to be challenged and I need to make this digital, and I want to make these resources available to everyone. As you can see, these little Bitmoji characters, I promise guys, I'm not conceited at all. In fact, I'm one of those people that right now I'm afraid even talking to you guys because I'm kind of shy. But I made my Bitmoji characters on there on the main page because my middle schoolers make fun of me. They loved it and they respectfully make fun of me. But what do you know? Every time I see them in the hallways when I'm at the middle school, they'll be like, Miss Weston, you really used that as the escape room thing. And I'll be like, yeah. And then I turn around and I'm like, so how are you doing in this class? And they're the ones that approached me. So it's an opening to then talk to them and find out what's happening in their core classes, with where they're at on their challenges for gifted. So yes, it was a little bit sneaky, but I put myself on there to look ridiculous so my students would then approach me and I would have a way to keep in touch and learn about what they were doing. I went ahead and I opened this website to everyone, not just our gifted program, and I'm going to keep it up and continue to build on it next year. But what it is basically it houses a whole bunch of outside links to free things that my students can use. And again, that end of the year survey, the students have built this website by letting me know, hey, can you add this site? And they'll tell me and I'll go check it out, make sure it's appropriate. They use it for research in the core classrooms. If they're using, if they have to do an animal report, they'll get on Imagination Zone and they're like, oh, I have resources that have already been approved by a teacher, and they'll use the animal fact guide. They'll do virtual field trips with the ocean portals or the national aquariums that I have on there. They also like it for their own self-interest. I have a lot of dinosaur fans, so I made sure I have some dinosaur home pages. I have tons of escape rooms because they challenge students and they're fun. They're just great all around. I create weekly challenges. These are with the intent of being what we would do if we were in person for my gifted students. But they're available to everyone. I make sure I put what grade they're for, and it's always in the first column, K through second, in the second column, grades 3 to 5, and then 6 through 8. We have escape rooms on there. We do cultural connections. We do world connections as well. So geography, mythology, we do finance, language, holidays, voting, so political as well. I mean, we try to keep up to date with STEAM challenges. There are just so many challenges on here. And this part I've had grow myself, but the rest of it, all of the sites and whatnot, you would not believe by listening to the students how much input students have had in this site. They've helped create it with answering those personal interests in those surveys. And I know time, people are like, okay, how do you have the time for that? Honestly, once you figure out how to add the site and link it, it takes less than 5 minutes. And checking those surveys, I check them maybe once a week. And I don't add everything that students ask because some of it just is not school related and I can't argue about what they're going to learn out of it. But I always contact them and say, hey, good job, or hey, thank you for the recommendation. I've gone ahead and I've added to Imagination Zone. And over here, I'm not going to show you guys our student creations because they have student names on there, but you can see all the different sections. We have virtual Legos as well, origami. And with the origami, I always relate it to, shapes. I have them indicate and recognize how many different shapes, how many different folds. So they're practicing that as well. Design your virtual house has been really big for the older kids. because it has so much technology skills and it's fun. And also they're learning so much measurement and math skills with it as well. I'll take you back over here. Okay, so these are some of the testimonials from my students, because it's great for us to say, hey, gifted programs matter, and yes, we should have a gifted program. But again, asking students if they matter, that kind of helps support the idea of, okay, are we as educators, do we just want the program, or are students seeing the importance in it as well? And the answer, as you can see, it is pretty simple and it is pretty clear. Students, gifted students, they want a gifted program. They need a gifted program. They say that it allows them to learn about what they're passionate about, and it gives them the chance. That's the thing. We need to give these students the chance to use their strengths and to work on those other skills that maybe aren't strengths yet, but they could be with productive failure. Okay, so what you should really remember, we have gotten to that point. Hopefully I have not bored you guys too much or spoken too fast, because when I get nervous, I do tend to speak rather quickly, but we've reached that point about what you should really remember. Please remember that gifted students need the resources and the time to practice growth mindset in the power of productive failure. We're giving students time in the core classroom to redo their failures. But if you have a student that just gets an A and you're like, okay, they got this, they're good, I don't need to give them extra time. No, we need to continue to push them to that next level so they continue to progress. And that's what gifted programs do. We need to assure that they're effective and funded gifted programs to help provide the time and resources for that student progression. It's pretty hard right now. I'm not going to lie. Our program has been amazing and I am so grateful for the support, but how many gifted teachers out there can agree or raise their hand when they say for supplies, they're going through other teachers' throwaways? All the teachers in this building know it's the end of the year and they're like, okay, before I throw this away, I got to ask Miss Westen if she can use it for the gifted program, because since we're not funded, it does make it hard at times, but we're innovative as well as teachers, and that communication, we're able to help each other and make sure our students progress. Practice makes progress for you and the students. Please don't forget this, because it's very important for teachers as well to remember that even though that lesson bombed and you feel like you are a failure today, you are not. You had a moment of productive failure, and imagine how amazing that lesson is going to be next time you try it. And you know what? Those failures as well, remember to communicate with your students and ask them, what do you think we could have done to make it better? And students will help us teach them as well. And we need to learn from each other. The main focus should be on the process, not the product. Please don't put so much emphasis on, oh my gosh, this product turned out so pretty. No, I don't like that word pretty on there, because it's like, how much did they learn from it? What did they do? What steps got them to this? That's what we need to focus on. We need to make sure students feel safe to fail productively. We need to make sure we're talking to our students, we're setting up our classrooms where it relates to them, and we're providing that relatedness and connection. We need to, this is the most important part. Please, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, please remember to normalize productive failure. Let's take a lesson from music and sports where there are different level teams and recognize that ability and perseverance are necessary for success. Let's encourage students to feel confident and strive to reach beyond their present potential, and offer challenging education tailored to each child's unique learning needs. Don't leave gifted students out. Help them normalize productive failure as well. Okay, and these are because I just like sharing those resources as well. If you want to research growth mindset more in depth, here's a site that you can check out a wonderful TED Talk. And these are some other free resources. Rushton, he has he's a founder of Next Vista for Learning. There's a free library of videos for so many different subjects. And keyword They are free resources, so we can use those as well. Mindset Works is another free resource that has tons of growth mindset lesson plans. And then my TPT store has tons and tons of free lesson plans as well. And there's a whole bunch of things on growth mindset on there. Please remember, the only person you need to compare yourself with is who you were yesterday. Remind students of this as well. Remind them, practice makes progress. It is okay that if today they were having a bad day, make tomorrow better. And this is just where I got my information from. So let's see, hopefully I didn't bore you guys too much and you got a little bit out of why growth mindset and productive failure is so important and the importance of having a gifted program for our gifted students. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how anybody couldn't retain more than 50% of that. There were so many great resources in there, and I just loved all your stories from the classroom and everything that you did. The Imagination Zone, like, great job designing your own website. Like that.
Thank
That was
you.
awesome.
And it really has been, I'm going to say it and I'm going to sound like a broken record because it really has been the kids that have been like, I found this resource and hey, let's do this. And there's over 100 different things on there now. And as far as the weekly challenges, yes, I do those, but the kids really have suggested, I just got 5 today before this. I need to go look into and make sure. And they're coding based, they're educational based, but they're also game based. So they don't realize they're learning as they're having fun.
That's so awesome. Well, I'm super impressed by that. So, but thank you again for sharing all of that. I really, really loved how much you emphasize that it is so important to have gifted programs at our schools. Like, we cannot not have these kids. Like, our kids need them. They're not going to just be okay. They're not just going to muddle through. Like, this is definitely something that our children need to become productive adults one day. You know, that's our whole goal in life, is to raise children to be productive adults, and they just need that extra services. So I really loved how you emphasize that, and we are still working so hard to get funding here in Arizona so you don't have to get the table scraps from the other teachers. So
I'm hoping.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to your presentation. You know, we teach our kids at home the growth mindset, and you know, I've loved the opportunities to practice failure. So many, especially on the perfectionist side of it.
It is. I mean, even for adults, how many of us teachers can say we internalize that failure a lot of times, and we need to learn how to productively fail as well.
Definitely.
So the grace we're showing our students, we need to remember to show ourselves as well.
And well, even as parents too, as teachers, anybody that has to work with, you know, children and just be an adult. Yeah, just learning that productive failure.
Every human.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I hope everybody enjoyed this AAGT Informs episode. And Nadia, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, we'll just put your information in the links, and we'll share all the resources we can. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.